Welcome to the Trish and Sarah Wrestling Podcast. I'm Sarah.
I'm Trish.
And this is our podcast. We talk about wrestling news and various topics from different promotions, primarily AEW, but also New Japan Pro Wrestling, WWE, and topics from around the wrestling world. Whatever we find interesting, and we hope you will too. We are a proud member of the Social Suplex Podcast Network, and you can find our content on our podcast feed, the Social Suplex Podcast feed, as well as on Twitter and YouTube. Please feel free to like, subscribe, and rate our podcast. It is Monday, May 13th, 2024, and we are back in the studio for episode 17. And we're going to kick things off today with all things WWE. The first thing we're going to talk about today is the continuing developments in the Janel Grant lawsuit. We had a couple big things, sort of a trio of big things happen since our last episode, Trish. John Laurinaitis filed his response to the lawsuit. WWE did not file their response to the lawsuit. It's due tomorrow, May 14th, but they have indicated that they will also attempt to push forward the arbitration clause. So this is a thing that I think we should clarify for everybody who isn't sure before we move forward. But one of the terms of the NDA that Janel Grant signed, the one that is in question, is that if there was a disagreement between Janel Grant and Vince McMahon, it would be decided within arbitration. And this is a process in the United States where you can sign an agreement that means that you can't sue the other person, and that if you have a problem, it will be happen in arbitration. This happens a lot with corporations, and it means by going to arbitration, it sort of benefits Vince McMahon because it's a completely private process. It's not public in any way, and a lawsuit is a public process. So by pushing for a compelling to arbitration, it means that they want to kind of shut, the finding and everything else out of this. So, but this is a big part of Janel Grant's lawsuit. She believes that the arbitration clause, like the rest of the NDA, is unenforceable and is void for a bunch of reasons. Trish, I'll let you take the lead on this one. What were some of the big developments we had in the last couple of weeks with this?
Yeah, so we had a statement from the lawyer of John Laurinaitis on the 2nd of May. That was from Edward Brennan, who said that Laurinaitis has filed a motion today, fully joining in and adopting Vince McMahon's motion to compel arbitration. Mr. Laurinaitis corroborates Mr. McMahon in publicly declaring that Ms. Grant's allegations of sexual abuse and coercion in her complaint are completely unfounded. My client will fight these false allegations together with Mr. McMahon in the proper forum, arbitration. This is interesting because there was a previously released statement much closer to when the initial lawsuit was filed that said, Mr. Laurinaitis denies the allegations in a misguided complaint and will be vigorously defending these charges in court, not the media. Like the plaintiff, Mr. Laurinaitis is a victim of this case, not a predator. The truth will come out. Read the allegations, read the federal statute. Power, control, employment, supervisory capacity, dictatorial sexual demands with repercussions if not met. Count how many times the complaint Vince exerts control over both of them. So it's a complete flip.
It's a big flip.
Yeah, and I think there was some people that were expecting it. There were some people that maybe have been surprised by it. But I do think there is a key bit in this that arbitration is a process that, if it goes there, means that he is taken out of the dispute. And WWE will also be taken out of the dispute, which is why when you see the intent to file coming from WWE, it makes sense. Because for John Laurinaitis, I think that's two things. So firstly, it would take him out of any kind of financial ramifications because both WWE and Laurinaitis are being sued in addition to Vince McMahon.
Yes.
But also, it would take away questions on his conduct in the past.
Yes.
So, he was relieved as head of talent relations in the summer of 2012 before being rehired. And also, I think a lot of people forget this, the original Wall Street Journal reporting in the summer of 2022, everybody kind of needs a reread because it never kind of comes back up, but there are so many key details in there. And one of them was that the Wall Street Journal wrote that the Board of Directors investigation has also uncovered, quote, other older non-disclosure agreements involving claims by former female WWE employees of misconduct by McMahon and Laurinaitis. So there is, and that also included his demotion being around a $1.5 million non-disclosure agreement happening around the same time. So there's obviously other things that could potentially be looked into that is already known by people in the kind of the wider press. So it seems like it's absolutely in his interest for it to want to go to arbitration. Funny enough, his demotion in 2012, he was replaced by Paul Levesque, the head of talent relations.
Right.
But it's, sorry.
No, Laurinaitis flipping is in some ways kind of risk-free for him, because if he says, hey, I want this to go to arbitration, and it goes to arbitration and it doesn't go to arbitration, he can then sort of flip back and be like, no, actually, I was a victim, right? He doesn't, nothing he says in this initial finding sort of prevents that from happening. So it makes a lot of sense. And I think another thing that's important to remember is that John Laurinaitis is a very, very wealthy man, but he's not Vince McMahon wealthy. Like, he's not someone with hundreds of millions. I mean, Vince McMahon has hundreds of millions of dollars. If you keep looking at the amount of money he's cashing out in WWE stock, it's obscene. So for him, there's this is sort of a low risk legal strategy. There's, like I said, there's nothing in what he's writing in his response that I think necessarily can prevent him from flipping back again. But, we're going to have to see how it goes.
Yeah, and I think there's another key point. So I know some people pointed to the Speak Out legislation, but I think Todd Martin over at Torch, who might be, is he the only analyst that actually works in law and wrestling? Probably is, I would say. I can't think of anyone else with a legal background. But he points out that for that to be activated, the NDA would have needed to be signed before the kind of the conflict.
Yes.
So that's kind of a key point. So they can't use that legislation. So when the lawsuit was filed, Grant's team of Ancalis and made a key point that it was around the non-payment was one of the reasons why they wanted the lawsuit kind of to be active and have the NDA thrown out, and they were unable to use the legislation to help them in that case. For WWE, it makes perfect sense as well, because from their perspective, their PR run has been pretty successful in kind of Bad Man Gone.
Yep.
And the last thing they want is anything going to Discovery. You think about some of the things contained in the lawsuit and text messages and things, in terms of Brock Lesnar being kind of involved in this, in terms of having services offered to him for his kind of new contract. They don't want anybody looking into that.
No.
They don't want anyone looking into getting hold of text messages. Just look how damaging it was for UFC. That period of Discovery in that lawsuit. So they don't want any of that happening.
No.
That could be incredibly destructive and not something that they can control, because their big thing is they want to control everything around this.
Yes.
And, we've seen plenty. What we're going to talk about after is a perfect example of that. So, so this definitely suits them to be able to promote their kind of quote-unquote new era, as it was reported, without Vince McMahon. So they don't want anyone looking in the past, but they also don't want anyone looking at their current culture to do it.
No.
And that even comes with, news like, former Chief Operating Officer Brad Blum, one of the most senior executives in the company, leaving the company.
Yep.
Tending his resignation on the 1st of May. And, they say, Dave Meltzer reported in the Observer that week that they don't have any details other than it was his own decision. Nobody was forced out. However, he was a key individual, corporate officer named in that lawsuit. So it's interesting timing. Very interesting, by the way, that the Seth Rollins contract news came out exactly at the same time as that.
Crazy.
It's almost, at best, it was fortunate timing for WWE, so to say. It's probably the nicest description I'd give of that. But there seems to be, that element. So it's that continuation. You see it. There's so much kind of little bits of press that you kind of see all the time where it's very much the bad man is gone. We're all moved on. Everybody doesn't even care about it now. Doesn't have any effect on our culture. And they will do anything to maintain that image.
None of Vince's people are left. Everybody's moved on. Hey, look, there was a cool drone shot in Raw last night. Like, that's, and it's, this was like, was it like not even that long ago? That's the part that's so crazy, is that they've done such an incredible job just sort of trying their best to convince everyone. And so few people are willing to even discuss that topic at all that it just, the success is just incredibly outrageous.
And then we come on to talking more about kind of WWE's current culture that they don't want to discuss. So, yeah, this is a very heavy kind of start to this this podcast of stories, but it is what it is. You know, we need to cover it.
Yeah,
especially as you said, because not enough people are. So anything that we can add to discussion, the better. But the Drew Gulak situation.
Yeah.
So what I want to do is I want to split this up kind of into 3 different parts. So the actual kind of issue and what happened with Gulak, the stuff at the press conference, and then the kind of media fallout afterwards. And the reason I want to do it that way is the first issue is the most important.
Yes.
And nobody wants to talk about it as being the most important because it's been deflected into everything else. But that's because they want that to happen.
Right.
And people helped that. The people assisted that very well nicely for them.
Yes.
But that's why we're going to talk about it first. So this all starts with, funny enough, somebody who's still been very vocal about the culture of WWE and relating it back to Vince McMahon and the lawsuit in Ronda Rousey. And it's interesting that, you know, this is probably the one powerful female voice that's disconnected enough that she can say whatever she wants, really, can't she? They can't touch her.
No.
And that's been kind of a key thing. But she went on News Nation at the start of April. You know, she was there to promote her book. And, she called WWE a sexist, patriarchal culture. And she relayed an incident with Drew Gulak. She said that Bruce Pritchard and another one of the writers, whose name she can't recall, she can't come up with the name, but she said that the guy, and she's referring to Gulak, was standing there. She was standing there, and this guy, who I was a barely an acquaintance with, grabs the string of my sweatpants as I'm walking by. And I wasn't even looking at him. I look down the hall, and nobody else reacts, as though this is abnormal. And he grabs this, and he starts going down the hall, and I'm like, what the fuck is that? Why are you grabbing the string of my sweatpants? If my husband was standing there next to me, would you feel comfortable walking up to me and grabbing the string of my sweatpants? And no one around me acted as if it was abnormal. All the guys around me were like, this is part of the day. And this guy was coming up to me and doing this kind of stuff to me when there are other people around. What's happening to these other girls when I'm not in the hallway? So that really put me on edge about that not only this behavior was prevalent, but also prevalent people don't even realize it's a problem anymore. And it's one of those things. So we talked about this incident last time out.
Yep.
Not kind of realizing what was going to happen. But Gulak responded to what Rousey said the day after and said, it's important that we give that side as well. Backstage at a WWE event in 2022, I saw Ronda talking with a group in the hallway. I stopped to say hi and shake all their hands. In an attempt to shake her hand, I accidentally touched her drawstring. Complete accident, and one that I had apologized for her for the mishap. So that happened then. He, according to Sean Ross Sapp, had creative plans figured out for the foreseeable future of NXT. He then doesn't appear on the next episode of NXT, and his name has been taken out of the graphic on the Tiatron when the rest of his, what they call no quarter catch crew, were present. The following week, and they don't name Gulak when this happens, in an in-ring segment, Tony D'Angelo has apparently killed him off, and they now start a feud over non-payment of that. In fact, they actually say the trash has been taken care of.
Right.
At that time, the Wrestling Observer are specifically told that it was obvious that he was being removed from NXT, and while not officially gone, he would not be back. And that's what they do. They take people off and they leave them kind of out in the kind of background, but they don't want to publicly kind of do anything or say anything like that because it can be tracked straight back. And the whole thing is to not create attention.
Right.
Okay. Numerous people have reported that there was an investigation. WWE have never acknowledged an investigation. WWE have never acknowledged the results. Brian Alvarez says they were inconclusive. That's the only information that we have on that.
Right.
We don't have anything else. Dave Meltzer writes that one person there acknowledged how it went down, said there was an undercurrent. There may be more stories that surfaced, and the Ronda story was the original reason. He wasn't coming back after it, but then it opened the floodgates. Then on the 3rd of May, Gulak was first reported by PW Insider to be amongst the string of NXT cuts. Fightful then additionally report that they had confirmed this release. That story is still up on their website.
Yes.
For the people that think that story doesn't exist, still up on their website. At the press conference the next day for Backlash in Lyon, France, I'm gonna try and get this name as good as I can. On my French pronunciation, it's awful. So apologies to the young reporter there. But Lucas Chapera, is that Chapera?
I would say right? Sharpio, but
Sharpio. Let's go Sharpio. Thank you. Asked Triple H if the information was correct in terms of Gulak being released. And if it was it related to the allegations made by Rousey? Two-part question. Triple H states...
Can't stress enough that it was a two-part question. Okay.
Oh, we'll come back to that. We will come back to that. Triple H states that he was not released, but instead they had decided not to renew his contract. Fightful then confirmed that he is still with the company, with his deal set to expire next month. So there's a change in there. They then say that, and quote, from those they spoke to in NXT, the belief is that Gulak's public response to Rousey's claim only made things worse for the former Cruiserweight champion, but was not the determining factor in the decision not to bring him back. So, random talent in NXT, source of complete belief. There then claims that he was a bully that would often target injuries and had been reprimanded by Shawn Michaels at a taping last year. Last year. Yeah. Satlin said that there were previously off-the-record stories that then could go on the record on that Saturday. You know, my big question on that is, who gave permission for that? We can talk something off the record? You think that just becomes background just by choice? That these talent can just make that decision? Okay. Mm. And then you get into the issue of, okay, so I don't think, and we'll go through some reasons behind a bit, but when you look at the evidence here, okay, and most of it is not coming from WWE, it's coming from people reporting on WWE. There's nothing coming from WWE directly.
No.
So there's no transparency on this issue. We all know they don't want transparency, but there is no transparency in this issue. So then we have this case of, there was an interview with Ronda Rousey. He's immediately removed from TV, and that people are told that he will never be back, and he's removed from graphics and killed off in storyline, which at the time we said more people were focused on the killing off in storyline than the actual issue behind it.
Yep.
And now we're talking about bullying. But we have an incident that was reprimanded last year, and there seems to be reports of long-term kind of issues. So which culture do you want to acknowledge, is my question. So are we saying that it's okay because this wasn't sexual misconduct, but it's okay to have this kind of bullying happen when NXT has had a history with things of bullying, you know, build them up, being dismissed eventually was quite a big example. And, you know, you had comments like Shawn Michaels at the Vengeance Day press conference earlier in the year where he talked about, you know, we have policies in place for safeguarding and people can come to me. Similar to, you know, we talked about Tony Khan saying people can come to me when they've got an issue. So if these people had an issue with bullying and this has been going for a long period of time, were they not able to do this, to come to you for a decision to be made? And, you know, he's not being released for bullying.
Nope.
He's having his contract not renewed. That's not the same thing. He's not being released for his conduct. We're not firing somebody for conduct here. That's not happening. We're saying, oh, we're not going to renew his contract. So they're different things. And I think there's this energy where we're just saying, oh, it's not sexual misconduct, so it's fine. But how can you say that and then say, oh, you know, this kind of abuse is acceptable?
Well, he's either someone who, you know, and I think it's certainly plausible that you could have an inconclusive investigation in this, right? This is the kind of innocuous type of encounter between people that, most folks may not remember, right? This thing happened. And I think even the way Ronda Rousey talked about this, it was not like, oh, this specific thing is a thing that pissed me off. It was, this is an endemic thing of the culture that this is an acceptable way for professionals to talk to this is not an acceptable way for professionals to engage with each other. And yet this was acceptable. He felt this was something he could do, to the point where this is the kind of stuff where I wouldn't be shocked, if you put Drew Gulak under truth serum and he said he genuinely didn't remember this, or he didn't think this was a big deal, that wouldn't surprise me either, because that's the kind, this is what we're talking about. This is just acceptable. You don't have to think about it. You just do it and you don't think about it because it's part of who you are and it's part of your life, right? So, okay, so you want to say, well, this isn't a big deal. And we had people who flat out seemed to be parroting, emphatically insisting that Drew Gulak did not get fired because of the round
How do they know?
Stuff.
How do they know?
How do you know, right? Who you believe? Who's telling you that, and why do you believe them, right? Especially since we've gotten a bunch of things confirmed that are now suddenly not confirmed, and now we have other things confirmed. Who's doing the confirming? And you know what I mean? Maybe this is a point where you have a little transparency in how we're reporting some of these things. I don't know, whatever. I think it's funny to me that WWE thinks one of these things is better than the other one, because they're both pretty fucking horrible. Either Drew Gulak's been in NXT bullying people and making them feel like shit and targeting injuries and doing all this stuff, and it hasn't been a problem, and the trainees don't feel like they can say anything to anybody. I remember that quote so vividly because somebody asked Shawn Michaels specifically at that press conference, do you have written policies? And he said, yes, we do. And the person said, what are the written policies? He said, well, I don't have to know them off the top of my head. Well, clearly you fucking do, because you're telling me that this guy got fired because he was a bully, but that wasn't a problem until after this freaking interview that Ronda Rousey did, right? Last year. So you knew about this for a while. You did nothing about it. The whole thing boggles the mind.
The funny thing is that people want to say, oh, this is how it happened, but then you look at the timeline kind of thing, and it doesn't indicate that. But then you look at their past behavior. This guy was a low-level guy. He was expendable. Does that happen if it's someone that's not expendable? If it's someone that they believe is a draw?
Right.
Policies exist for everybody, don't they? Until they don't. And that's, we've talked about that to death in the last 6 months. But also, they had the saga of Patrick Clark, who was accused of sending photos to underage girls and then of grooming a young independent wrestler called Josh Fuller. And this was something that when the allegations were made, there was an investigation. That investigation was actually acknowledged by WWE. Triple H did press with CBS Sports and said that they had an investigation and they didn't find anything. So that one is actually more transparent than this one, in some ways. Patrick Clark then had a car accident and then wasn't obviously on TV after these allegations taking place. And this was in the mid of kind of speaking out in 2020. He then returns to TV in August of 2020 during the pandemic. So they're in their bubble sort of thing. And he is on TV until December. During that period, there are numerous complaints about his presence being on TV. They didn't like the publicity. He's then off TV, and then May of 2021, he is released amongst budget cuts, because that way people can't look at it and say it's like an individual case. That's why they do it. They want everything kind of out of the way. He does interviews where he says it's down to the allegations made by Josh Fuller. So he puts his release down to the allegations of grooming. It's a pretty close pattern in a lot of ways.
Yep.
And one of the things that actually kind of matches up was, and some people remember this, some people will gloss over it, was how much Triple H got upset when he was asked about it. He got very, very tetchy on a press call because he said, we've had this investigation, we found nothing, that's it, no more questions. And then people kept pushing it on him.
Right.
And he did not handle it well. And now we're in a situation with Gulak where this happens this year. where they are, under the spotlight in terms of sexual misconduct.
Yep.
And he again reacts poorly. But it's that case of they will try and make it kind of part of a normal process, so you stop kind of looking at it. So, Dave wrote on Friday, the official word that he was done came in conjunction with all the other releases. So you aren't supposed to look at it and see it any different. You are supposed to just think, oh, they just cut talent. But the process is very, very similar because they don't want the publicity. And it was very much the same with this, especially with the lawsuit. They don't want the publicity. So when this Rousey interview happened, that was it. He was never coming back. He was done. They never wanted it because they knew what would happen if he did come back on screen, what it would say that they accept. Whether he did it or not, it didn't matter because he was expendable and they don't want the publicity.
Right.
So, yeah.
I don't know. It's one of those things where, again, I just don't understand how you look at the totality of what happened and the context of it and the dates and think, oh, yes, this has nothing to do with the Ronda Rousey interview. And that, we see this happen over and over again with wrestling where people sort of remove context from things and then go, oh, that didn't happen. That's not like that. And it's like, guys, come on. It's like when you talk about court cases and it's like circumstantial evidence is you can convict someone on circumstantial evidence. This is it's okay to be like, this is what they're doing. I don't know.
There is nothing that breaks the pattern. There's nothing that isn't what they have done in these situations before.
Over and over again.
And that's the key thing with WWE. It's their behavior. They have this pattern of behavior. If you go back and look at that, it easily becomes, much easier to see how this reflects the same pattern. We're not seeing anything different. We don't have any different information that indicates anything different.
Right.
Except for there's something that apparently was wrong with the culture either way, but we decide that one thing is worse than the other, and therefore everything's fine. That's insane.
Well, one thing we're getting sued for very publicly,
yes,
and one thing we're not. So we'll pick the sued one.
Sure, and it doesn't. If one of our talent is bullying our young talent that's coming through on NXT, then that's okay. That's okay because we have this hierarchy in place, and everyone in wrestling just accepts it. We've got a question from listener Chris Ellis. Do you think cutting Gulak and Stevenson the same week Blum lead signals an attempt for a change in culture in WWE, or am I reading into coincidences? What do you think?
I don't think I think that WWE has an absolute metric fuck ton of bad shit in their past that many of us are familiar with intimately, and a lot that many of us probably have no idea about, and a bunch of shit that hasn't come out at all. And I think that, and again, any risk management firm, any smart attorney would say, hey, let's take a look at some of the risks you've got going on. Let's look at some potential factors that could be a problem, and people started investigating them or stuff started coming out. What could we do? And it's very easy to be like, hey, that guy's gone now. It's not a big deal. He doesn't work here anymore, right? Especially if you can look at someone and say they're not earning money for the company. They're not doing anything for us. They're not providing any level of value. We talked about that. What was TKO's comment? Everyone is expendable. That came out pretty recently, right? So, you have people that are no longer there who are suddenly no longer there. It's like, well, why do you need to keep Drew Gulak? What's he doing for you, right? You could plug in any number of a dozen guys into that angle and it would be fine, right? Brad Blum, what is Brad Blum providing to you now that Vince is gone? I am sure that there is someone going through a bunch of this shit and being like, hey, where are the bodies buried? Let's remove all the maps and the gravestones and maybe etch some of these, make some of these names less important in our organization. And I think you can see that with, as you said in our podcast notes.
Yeah, no, so you've got others as well. So, Jerry King Lawler doesn't have an announcement deal anymore.
Nope.
He may have a legend contract. I'm sure you don't need to run through that. Gable Stevenson, I don't think that has anything to do with risk at all. I just think he was probably being paid a lot of money for the position he was in, and they didn't think he was going to get there.
Right.
I don't think they, once he wasn't cleared, but once he was kind of away from a technicality, they just didn't even think about it. Didn't see a concern. And yeah, he's not progressing. And maybe, the question itself with talking about coincidences actually says, this is their attempt to look like they are changing in some ways. But is it reality? No, I don't think the culture is changing that much at all. It's just a case of, perception. And yeah, you're right. We don't need any additional risks. So if anything comes up, if we get that sort of publicity, it's done. It's gone.
Yeah, I'm sure that there are people who think, like, let's be honest. I'm sure the whole Bad Man Gone thing is within WWE itself too. I am sure that there are people who are very happy to say, hey, Kevin Dunn's not there anymore. Vince isn't there anymore, right? Laurinaitis isn't there anymore. Everything's fine now, right? Like those were Vince's guys. We don't have to worry about this shit. So things are much better. Instead of actually looking around at the actual culture and saying, is it any different? Is it any better? Like, maybe these two things aren't happening, but what about all this other shit? As you said, what about this concept of like, hey, you're a big star, you can do whatever you want, like that's the kind of stuff that I think when I say the risk management stuff, I don't think there is a change in the culture. I just think that there are people looking around and saying, hey, let's try and tidy up a little bit, right? But not in a way that's going to actually do anything.
And as we said before, that's a wrestling hierarchy thing. That's not just WWE in that. But obviously, more instances are more prolific there over the time period. But it's something that needs kind of looking at. But there's that whole thing about they want to, it's all protect the business. So we don't need transparency, but we don't also need risks. And that kind of showed up with Triple H. So not the first press conference we've talked about Triple H's kind of performance or kind of aggressiveness for certain questions or kind of wanting to kind of control a situation. So the question that he got was, I just wanted to ask you, Fightful and PW Insider reported that Drew Gulak was released by WWE. I wanted you to clarify on the situation if this was true, and if it is it anything to do with Ronda Rousey's accusations about sexual? And he didn't get to finish the question because Levesque cut him off. Then says, first of all, if you're going to cite news sources, pick good ones. This is where I would start. Credible, really, maybe. And then on the question of Gulak, he says, can I say he was released? He was not released. His contract was just not renewed, and goes through how the NFL cuts people. Triple H under pressure. He doesn't do well in these things, does he?
No, and I think what can't be understated here is his tone, right? Mm-hmm. His tone was like, I strongly recommend, like, this is everywhere. You can find it on the internet with basic searching, but his tone on this was so, like, you're an absolute moron. Like, you're wrong. You're stupid. Why would you even bring this up? We release people all the time. We're just like the, and it was withering.
It's very similar to how kind of Dana White does his press conferences. You think back at the experience that John Pollock had when he dared question UFC. Yep. And, so you look at it and you think, is this kind of an Endeavor thing where anything like that, they will become ultra aggressive to try and get you off, not essentially the scent, but just kind of keep you away from the actual story. And, this was a young journalist who, was representing 10 Count Media, Steve Force company. And there was said that there were WWE employees afterwards that were basically saying that Full put this up to us and put him up to this, and they won't be brought to events again. That kind of thing is completely unacceptable as well. So there is this kind of it's kind of going after not just that media person, but then also trying to go after outlets and kind of deem what's acceptable. So you are kind of telling the rest of the people there, the rest of that media, that you must play along, you must toe the line. This is what's acceptable. And I wonder if that was increased because they were abroad, they weren't in the US. But that's quite a big story in itself that nobody wants to talk about. And, it's not the first time that Triple H has kind of questioned the press. He had some comments at Money in the Bank's press conferences last year where he kind of took some shots at what he thinks is credible in that. And the whole idea of that wasn't, and even at Royal Rumble, when, he was questioned on the McMahon lawsuit by, the three people that actually did question him. the whole idea was that, like, well, we've just had this great week. I don't care. We just had this great week. We only want positivity here. And some of that is his kind of mindset. He looks at wrestling press as a lot of people from that era kind of look at wrestling press, and, you aren't anything. He doesn't believe they're anything.
No.
Does he believe they're credible? No, I don't think he even cares. He might think they're useful at times, but not gonna, he's never going to acknowledge that. And the whole point of it was to deflect you from the story and a question about WWE culture.
Well, here's my question to you on that. If you do you think that had Lucas Sharpio mentioned any other outlets, any other media outlets for wrestling, do you think Triple H's answer would have been changed in any way? Or do you think it would have been the same?
No, I think it would have been exactly the same.
Right.
I think he just looks at wrestling media as a whole. I don't think it would have mattered if it was Dave Meltzer or WrestleZone or, I don't know, come up with your own outlet. I don't think it makes any difference whatsoever. It doesn't matter that, PW Insider and Fightful are probably the closest of all outlets to WWE, but it doesn't matter. He doesn't care. He doesn't have, and, there's people saying he said it because he thought that they'd reported that it was related to Ronda Rousey. That's the explanation that's been used to some of these outlets. But it's like, no, he still would have said it. He said similar comments last year, about credible media. They look at it, and there's a lot of people in WWE look at this way. The only credible media they want to work with, or the way they deem credible media, are kind of these bigger outlets. Like the NBC News story that we talked about last time around.
Right.
With the Vince McMahon puppies one, but also emphasized that Levesque and Stephanie are not in contact with Vince McMahon.
Right.
Outside of family or, but that's the sort of thing that they would rather have. They're not interested in coverage from wrestling media. No. However, these press conferences, the idea of doing them, and it's the same thing with UFC, is it's not about kind of, we value the media or we want to have these kind of tough questions. It's in a way to try and show that you're transparent when you're really not.
Right. Right. They're not being in any way, these things are not about transparency. Which again, it boggles the mind that they do them at all at this point, because it's clear that it's backfired on them at least twice right now. So you question whether or not they're going to be able to do this again. But they're not looking for transparency. They're not looking for discussions or conversation. They're basically just looking for you to listen, we had a great week. Everything's gone really well. WWE is the market leader. It's all the bullshit that they want you to constantly be parroting.
Yeah, and, it's also reported that they gave softball questions directly.
Yes.
To people, WWE Communications PR team gave to reporters in that room. And also that one of them told Lucas that the asking his question was a dumb thing to do.
Right.
And this is apparently not a story, by the way. Barely anybody has discussed this as a story, the way that, they want to control the kind of the press response. And, so many people feed into that. So there was a report that there was groaning in the room when he asked the question, because they feed into it with, we just want positive content. And that's kind of a really dangerous place to be in. But that's why they will continue to try and do these things in the hope that they will get less and less kind of questions on them, that they can control this space. And people say it's just WWE content, it's screened on there. But it's then tell it what it is. Is it WWE content, as in just some sort of entertainment thing, or is it a press conference? Do you want to be real or not? And you can stem that line quite well, I guess, with WWE, because there is so much less outside coverage. There are less outlets that have people that just cover wrestling. We just lost Mark Raimondo's gone to local sports journalism.
Yep.
That's another one gone that covered for a major outlet, WWE. And it becomes kind of harder now with outlets kind of outside becoming smaller and the way news is consumed changing, and that affects kind of everybody. But, Triple H has treated the reporter. He has treated him, pretty much like he's nothing. They are treating the rest of the people that are deemed wrestling media there like they're nothing, that they're just something to be used. And, and then the same with these outlets that he called out. And the whole idea was just to shift off this story. And in that way, he was successful.
Absolutely.
Whether we like it, he was successful, but he was also aided in that
Yeah.
We got to talk about wrestling media now.
Well, I think the one thing that I would, before we move on to that, I think for anybody who's like, oh, why do we have to cover this? Oh, why do they want to ask these guys these questions? It's just wrestling. It's just WWE. This is a $1 billion company. WWE is a $1 billion fucking company. You know, they employ hundreds of people. They're doing traveling shows constantly. They're all over television. Like, yeah, they should be willing and able to answer questions that any other fucking $1 billion company should be able to answer about their business practices, about their human resources, all sorts of random shit like that. Especially when they're on human rights, especially when they're under investigation and there's a lawsuit been filed against their former founder and board executive and all that other shit for fucking sex trafficking. Okay? Like, this is not like if you think that these questions are not acceptable, first of all, you're probably not listening to this podcast to begin with. But like secondly, like, you know, actually, like, I would push people who haven't considered this to actually go listen to one of these. Take a half an hour or, you know, a little bit and actually go listen to the questions that are asked, right? Because I think that's important. And the way in which the questions that are not, the way in which, like I said, Triple H's tone on this, his tone on the Royal Rumble, the way they talked about that, like, it's worthwhile hearing for yourself the level of arrogance in the way that these questions are responded to and the expectation as to what kinds of questions they should be getting. It's worthwhile to hear it for yourself.
It's just aggressive in nature as well, isn't it? It's supposed to kind of, it's intimidation tactics. That was the word I was trying to work out earlier. It's the whole idea is to intimidate those people, not just in front of you, but anyone else that might deem themselves that they want to ask a question in future.
Right.
And then, you know, that continued with what happened to Lucas after. So the immediate response to this was some of the kind of worst media behavior I've seen in quite some time. And, you know, we'll do some recommendations, but Jesse Collins did a fantastic summary of this on the Gentleman's Wrestling podcast in the immediacy on Monday evening.
Cannot recommend it highly enough. He boils it down. He puts it down to the most simple points. It's a literally half an hour of audio. Please go take a listen to it. I can't recommend, I don't think Trish and I can recommend it strongly enough. Jesse just really nails a lot of the issues, especially coming from somebody with an actual media background.
Yeah, an actual journalist.
Yeah, an actual journalist.
In a field of, they call them cosplay art. I think Joe Lanza called them cosplay artists. Cosplay journalist, but an actual journalist who breaks down all the issues. But, you know, the response immediately from the major two outlets that were named was incredibly defensive. And rather than saying that, you know, we stand by our work and, you know, you follow, you know, our audience trusts in what we kind of produce and you can see that it's credible. You know, we don't need WWE to tell us whether we're credible or not. There is no kind of coverage of the issue immediately in that response. It's just, we have been attacked and we are going to defend ourselves. But then we're going to defend ourselves also by punching down on somebody else.
Yep.
Because that's then what they did. So first of all, I just want to say that Lucas was working for as a freelance for 10 Count Media. I don't think, and I've tried to go through socials, through their YouTube, I don't think I've found one comment from Steve Full or from that kind of outlet on this at all, defending their journalist. But then you had kind of, especially on Monday, it got really, really stupid. So Lucas endured death threats.
Yep.
Which is pretty horrific for asking a question that was correct and was the only real question asked at this press conference. He had death threats. This is how serious this became. And this was inflamed by the reaction of these two outlets. You know, you had Sean Ross Sapp, who, you know, we acknowledge he's had, you know, a pretty rough time recently, but you also can't not acknowledge his behavior in this as well. You know, he was liking tweets that called them being included in the question as awful and pretty negligent. He then replies to that person saying that that person apologized personally to his credit. He is asked who should apologize in another tweet, Lucas or Triple H, and replies, Lucas reached out. And another tweet that said he was, quote, misquoted. He replied, he apologized personally. So you created an insinuation that Lucas did something wrong.
Right, that he should apologize.
Yes. You created that insinuation. And then when he was challenged on, so at first they were like, we have not reported this.
Yeah.
And then when he was challenged on the report still being on their website, he said, we never reported that it had anything to do with Rousey. But the question never said that. The question was two-part. It said that you and PW Insider reported that Ronda Rousey was released. And that is correct.
I can't.
And then,
no, I don't. Listen to the fucking audio, people. Like, this is the part that gets so frustrating. Don't take my word for it. Don't take aggregator B's word for it. Don't take your friend's word for it. Listen to it for yourself, right? Then decide if you're mad or not. Like, I can't, like, this has just been, this entire week has just been people, it feels like, relying on aggregation, relying on somebody telling them. And like, God knows, I've been guilty of this. Trish and I have certainly summarized things for each other and have misinterpreted or said, hey, geez, I haven't done this right. My recommendation is always listen for yourself. And it's time consuming. And I get it. But you might be surprised that the thing you're being told somebody said, because let's face it, there's a bunch of bad actors that we all know that are very like, oh my God, did you hear they said this about you? Like, just listen to yourself. I genuinely think that a giant chunk of this would have been avoided if people had actually listened to the question that Lucas asked, right? Because I think that was a giant thing. People didn't actually listen to what he said, first of all, and then listen to the follow-up audio that other people did. We'll get into that in a minute, but I'm sorry, Trish, I didn't interrupt you.
No, if you have the time to be angry about something and post repeatedly about it, then you've got the time to go and listen to the actual context of audio.
Yes.
Sorry. Like, there's no excuse. Go and find out the context. Go and listen to it for yourself. Go and judge it. Then decide how you feel about something.
Knee-jerk takes are not your friend. Like, knee-jerk takes are never going to be your friend. They're never going to be a positive thing. They're never going to be something you should be doing. And listen, we're all human beings. We all have emotions. We're not robots. We exist in the moment. I get it. But there's a point sometimes we have to be like, I have to take a breath and figure out what the fuck is going on before I start firing off responses to shit.
Yeah. Very much so. So you have all these tweets and from Sean Ross Sapp on Monday that basically insinuate that Lucas was wrong, that he should never have asked the question in the way he did, and that he just had to apologize. Has he actually publicly apologized to Lucas at any point that you're aware of? No, I'm not aware of that either. And he should. You know, he goes on his audio Monday night and he says that, quote, this person never refers to Lucas by name.
Nope.
Asked a fair question, so he can acknowledge that on his audio, but didn't at the time in his written, and that Fightful had reported that Gulak had been released. You know, his name was dropped to them with the release names. He also acknowledged on audio that it was a two-part question. So you have used the question and tried to make it as a one question incumulative to defend yourself, to protect your own image by pushing down on this guy. But you can acknowledge it on audio, probably won't get aggregated, because very little of audio that SAP does get aggregated unless it's a news story in terms of a release or anything like that. But you won't put that into written. And the problem is with this is that people judge on what they see first. This is what we see with aggregation all the time. You know, we talked about it. We'll talk about it a bit more with the Dave stuff from Friday. They judge it on what they see first. So they see those tweets and they say, and never mind the fact, that they say Triple H apologized. He says that Triple H apologized to him privately off the record, and he's put that. Well, he's talked to him off the record, and he's put that elsewhere. They don't see that because you've insinuated that Lucas was the one that was wrong, and that's what everybody now believes, and that's then hurts Lucas because he's now getting threats and all these other things. You've stirred that up. You haven't then even apologized to the guy publicly. It's actually, and we'll go through the other examples of press because. It's not just Fightful. So Bill Pritchard at WrestleZone, literally is replying to Lucas himself and says, quote, it's important, but Fightful didn't report that. Some wires got crossed somewhere along the way. I don't think you did it maliciously. And Sean said that you already apologized. But when I was watching live, I know that the only attribution should have been to PW Insider. Keep your head up and learn from it. Everyone makes mistakes, and you made amends with Sean. I actually wanted to kick my screen.
This whole tweet exchange, which I recommend people going back and reading the back and forth, Lucas is over and over and over again saying, I specifically called out these two outlets because they were the ones who reported that Gulak was released. And I believed that not attributing that news to them was not acceptable, was that I needed to call out and say, these people said this, and that's why their names came up. And he says this over and over again, and Pritchard is so condescending to him in these replies, right? Like, and not only that, but like condescending to him for something that isn't even fucking accurate. Right? Because at no point, as we've said, does Lucas ever say that these two outlets said that he was released because of the Rousey stuff.
Yeah, and that was the second point. So at first he was claiming that Fightful had never reported anything. And then when it was pointed out to him, it then changed.
Right.
And then he still didn't acknowledge it.
Website.
Yeah, and he still didn't acknowledge it.
No.
Has he apologized to Lucas?
No.
You know, for being, quite frankly, you know, a completely patronizing, like, condescending, just, it's no way to talk to somebody. Whether, you know, I don't care what job you do. If someone would talk to you like that in any job, you'd be, it's just not acceptable.
Especially somebody who's done better at this than any of these other fucking guys have. Like, again, like you said, the only person in the goddamn press conference, and I'm not trying to, again, this is a European press conference, this was a European show. I'm not saying that these guys should have been in that place. But I can also tell you that it's not like there's this tremendous history of hard-hitting questions being asked at these press conferences from these outlets either. But go on.
Yeah. And then, well, you know, the other outlet that was involved in terms of directly mentioned was PW Insider. And at first, Mike Johnson tweeted, "Hey, Lucas, great to hear you are so sorry since you haven't bothered to apologize to capital letters me." That tweet was quickly deleted quite soon after. And he did have a later tweet. And, you know, to be fair to him, he is the only one who has publicly apologized as far as I'm aware.
Yes.
So he tweeted, this is a second reply, "A few people dragging me for when I tweeted at Lucas earlier today. They had every right to their opinion. I am glad he and I spoke, and I apologize for how, quote, aggressive, his word, the tweet was. I do not blame him for what happened in any way. Was confused he was apologizing to others, but didn't reach out to me. Had no idea he was dealing with an injury, and there was also language difference. We spoke via email, and I apologized to, capital letters, him, as I should have, and I invited him to dinner if he ever gets to NYC. All good, and I wish him the best. He was just trying to do the best job he could, the same as all of us." So, you know, it's that twofold thing. So fair play to Mike Johnson for actually apologising publicly.
Yep.
You know, it doesn't excuse the fact that his behaviour was very poor at the beginning, and the way that they reacted firstly took the story of being away from Triple H, kind of trying to get away from the question about sexual misconduct. Their immediate reaction was so powerful that it did change the story. And that shouldn't have happened, but also that it stirred up this kind of vitriol of hatred against this young reporter that then happened again after he appeared on Pollock and Thurston on Thursday, when he mentioned what he was told by someone at WWE. Unsurprisingly to me, the two places that looked to kind of platform Lucas and have him talk through the experience were post-wrestling. Shock to absolutely nobody, and Dave Meltzer with, you know, asked him if he could do Observer on Friday, but, you know, I understandably, because of what he experienced after Thursday, that wasn't something he was looking to do at the time. I can fully understand that. You know, this is a hell of a lot for somebody to deal with. Doesn't even matter, you know, he's 21, it's his second language, but for anybody to deal with that sort of kind of thing, and to have that stir that up by people in your own profession is completely shameful. And especially for people that, you know, they deal with things where you get feedback that you don't like, or you get things that are completely wild, or, you know, if you feel that sort of pressure, or you feel that sort of kind of hatred coming towards you, encouraging it on somebody else just to save your own brand and your image, when actually what you wanted to, and should have done, was just say that it was a fair question and we stand by our reporting. But instead you went into some sort of panic mode because you wanted to present yourselves as some sort of ally to WWE, that they valued you in your relationship, and that became more important than this young reporter. And that's absolutely horrific. I don't think there's any defending that. And there's been some rolling back as the week's gone on, but it doesn't really matter as much as your first impression, because that's all people remember. They don't remember the third, fourth, fifth day of coverage. They remember what they initially saw. And this is why we talk about aggregation so much. That's what they remember. How many stories have we seen in the last few years where it's just like, it doesn't matter what actually the truth ended up being. It all matters is what they were told in the first place. So your initial reaction buried this poor guy. And it's shameful. And if you haven't apologized publicly, you should do.
There's nothing to add to that, Trish. It's well said.
Yeah, well, the other thing about image management, and we should talk about it, if we're going to talk about, these outlets, was the cheese thing, yeah? So it's not as important. The important things were that you took the story away from the sexual misconduct story that was being asked about, and you buried a journalist. They're the important parts of this story.
Yep.
Oh, and WWE's control of the press. All right, you want to do all three, that's all three. But oh, great, yeah. So you received a gift from a company as a journalist or reporter, whichever one you want to claim. If you don't want to claim to be one of the other, it's the same thing. If you report news, you're a reporter, you're a journalist. You're supposed to do the same thing. Your whole job is to not just put news out there, but to contextualize and analyze it. And some people don't think that is their job, but it is your job. And, I know the first one, Sean Rossap tweeted the cheese platter gif with the quote, okay, well played. This made me laugh after a tough week. And the note said, Sean, it's a pleasure working with you throughout the year. Your work is strong and we appreciate the commitment to your craft. Nick, Paul, Chris, Greg, plus your friends at WWE. Here's the thing with this. It's very simple, right? It's not about, I ate the gift, after I spent 20 minutes unboxing it on a live stream. No. As soon as you put this on social media, and let's be fair, Mike Johnson did as well.
Yep.
You have, one, accepted it, but also you've done that PR work for them. This is a PR stunt. It's a public apology without name, because it's not really an apology, to make everyone think they're great guys. And guess what? It's the same people that they want you to think are great guys, because Batman is gone now.
Yes. Thank you. Look at how fun we are, everybody. Look at how cool and fun we are now. Vince is gone. We're awesome.
Aren't we a kind and gentler company? Aren't we a kind and gentler company? We made a mistake. Oh, we've played up for it. And now it's all publicly out there. So you've done that work for them. Congratulations.
You know who didn't get a fucking cheese platter? Lucas Sharpio.
He wouldn't have accepted on anyone he said. American cheese. No, but he was also like, it's American cheese. I'm French. I don't want that, which is great. Well done, sir. I can agree. But as soon as you've done that, you've played into that whole PR thing, that whole thing that they want you to do. Here's these guys. They're not the same as the old regime. Well done. Great. So now your readership that follows you because they believe you have a close relationship with WWE and WWE likes you, now thinks it's all sorted out. So you're not damaged. WWE aren't damaged. Nobody's asking about that story. Guess the only person that's damaged is the journalist that asked a fair question in the first place. Like, how can you not see that? And there's a little thing with this where it's like, when you look at how that question was phrased and how people responded to it in all of this, it's, are you media illiterate or are you being deliberately obtuse? There's only two answers here. There's nothing in between. It's one or the other. You pick. Take your pick. Whichever one you like. But that's it. That's it. There's nothing else. So you can claim this, that, and the other, and you can say, I didn't mean this, or it's not. These are the decisions you've made. When you make that decision, you know the implication of it. So your brand management, your image management became more important. It just drives me crazy. And then we got to, there are people that had to say it, right? I think it's very interesting that there's actually numerous people that have commented on this week and have broken it down. So we talked about Jesse Collins earlier, which was excellent. And then we had Voices of Wrestling did a written piece on the press conference with some of the details that we've used. So thank you for them. And also they did audio on Thursday night, who were much harsher than Dave Meltzer was.
Yes.
But Dave Meltzer is Dave Meltzer. So Dave Meltzer did a long, 25 minutes.
It was 25 minutes.
Yeah, on the state of wrestling media. And as we mentioned earlier, lots of people only read aggregation on this or saw kind of out of context clips. The whole thing is available on YouTube. You can go watch it. Go watch it. Go listen to it. think about what's actually being said rather than your own kind of predetermined kind of impressions of Dave Meltzer. So if you don't like The Messenger, go listen to Jesse Collins. If you don't want to listen to Jesse Collins, go listen to Val. There are plenty of people you can listen to on this who will go through the context and explain what the issues are. So, not everybody's perfect. Nobody's perfect. We can look at Dave Meltzer on that same day. He interviewed Jim Ross. He asked one question on Vince McMahon. Yep. It was diverted away from, there was no follow-up. So there's things that he could do better in these situations himself. But what he was saying wasn't wrong. I saw, and the thing is that people won't even go and look at it. We spoke about this. And this is the thing. You do two things where you see so many people, they rely on aggregation and they're not willing to go and find context. And I saw someone today say, oh, I bet it doesn't cover, the poor wrestling media coverage of the lawsuit. When literally that's 10 minutes of the whole fucking thing. Right. It's like, how can you judge this? Because you're going off your predeterminations, which are caused by some elements of the media and some parts of the fan base wanting Dave Meltzer to always be wrong. Yes. Wanting the observer to not be something. So there are, them tiny little shots and things of the audience. How many times do we see, he's got no sources or he doesn't get his stories right? Right. When 3 months later, them stories are right and the people that refuted it, like the firings in WWE, which we'll get to, the corporate firings that were never going to happen according to some outlets that Dave said that would happen. And guess what? There we are. So people come in with these predeterminations and then they just want to hear what they want to hear. Maybe it is the wrong messenger for you. That's fine. There's other messengers, but the points are all the same. And, this whole thing that he misrepresented some things, I don't think he misrepresented anything. On his main points were that there are no outlets other than him and Post Wrestling that are still covering the Janel Grant case and writing about them. And when Dave says that, he doesn't mean someone posting, WWE are filing a motion. Yeah. It doesn't mean, this has happened or that. It's not just a factual statement. It's here's the context of it. Here's what's happened so far. Here's the examples from the past. Here's other influences that might play into this. Here's other actions that might come into this. And it's analysing it. So what does this mean? How many news reports do you watch? And you guys don't get the 10 o'clock. Do you get 10 o'clock news over there? I don't know. Do you get 10 o'clock news? 6 o'clock news?
The big ones are at 6 and 11 are our big ones.
Okay, so we'll go 6 because we do 6 as well. Okay, cool. When you watch the 6 o'clock news and you have a reporter on the ground somewhere, they'll go through the news story and then they may go back to the studio and the first question will be, what does that mean? Right. That information doesn't mean anything without that analysis, analyzing and that context. And if you don't give it, it's absolutely pointless. Right. You're just throwing information out there that people can do anything they wish with, but actually doesn't have any meaning. And that's what he means. He doesn't mean, you didn't ever say anything about it. It's like, have you done anything to kind of follow up on that, to explain this story to your audience? Right. Because that's much a part of being a reporter or a journalist as anything. You are clarifying something that can be incredibly difficult to kind of information to interact with, to make it, manageable, bite-sized chunks, whatever way you want to call it. And that's what he was getting at. But there is this deliberate kind of thing of we're going to miss what the point is.
This happens over and over and over again to a point where I now have a hard time believing that it's not intentional at times.
Of course
and again, there's a degree to which it's like the point, you're missing the point, right? The point is not that you sent this, like you said, with the freaking cheese plate as an example. The point is not that you didn't eat it. The point is that you took the gift in the first place and were happy to divert the questions away from what the original point was, which is the culture around WWE and the way they treat their employees. Right?
Yeah, they run the PR for them. That was the point, right? Right. But also, he said that it was really sad that Lucas received heat despite asking the only real question at the press conference. Yes, it was. Yep. The immediate reaction to the question from these outlets was, quote, we have to tell everyone WWE likes us. Go back and look at them tweets. Yes, it was. He talked about the wrestling business wants to control everything. We'll put up with reporters but don't like them. Yep, very much protect the business. We've gone over countless and countless examples of that. I like this quote. They want a seat at a table as opposed to looking at the big issues and the real stories. Where have we not seen that? It's been constant for the last 6 months. You know, this Vince story, as Dave pointed out, the single most important person in wrestling history went, and now it's bad man gone. And there's so many outlets that are kind of constant on that. So they don't want to tackle these things. They just want the access. And you're not going to, you know, as he pointed out, doesn't mean you're probably going to get that much more information. You might get some nice PR scoops, but it doesn't mean you're going to get that much more information. You might get some more interviews. And if that's what your business is, then fine. But that's not news. You know, the big thing was, and it made me laugh because this one quickly became out of context. He said 1 in 10 of the questions aren't up to the standard of scrums at major sports. Correct. And that they should ask better questions. And that the Royal Rumble press conference was an embarrassment, which it absolutely was. There were 3 questions on it, on the most serious stories that ever hit that company and that press conference. 3 questions. In fact, one reporter actually said that I'll give you a nicer question after one of those questions. Like, here's the thing, right? So people look at these press conferences, press scrums, and that sort of thing. And there's a difference. So we have now 3 kind of different types of media involved in pro wrestling. And this isn't just pro wrestling. This is happening across lots and lots of media as the big outlets kind of become smaller or become more kind of behind paywalls and less accessible. So we've got journalists and reporters, which in wrestling, you know, you've got your major outlets. In terms of recognizable journalists, people would say, you know, Waycolor, Dave, Mike Johnson. We've got plenty of reporters, you know, like Sean Ross Sapp, like Broad Pritchard at WrestleZone. Here's the thing with it. So then you have your content creators who just want, you know, the nice, happy things. And here's an interview I got with LA Knight or whoever.
Yep.
And then you have your influencers. And that's the kind of the Instagram, TikTok stuff really coming to life. All these people are put in a room for these press conferences or even on the press calls. They're all in the same environment. Okay. Then you've got, and especially in the WWE one, you've even got people on travel packages. Hey, come to the press conference, you know, part of your travel package. Hey, what up, legend? Jesus Christ. Here is the problem with this change in media. For them, they aren't interested in serious content. But when there is a serious issue, then it's not time for you. And you have to accept that. It's not a case of, well, I've got this, you know, this is what my outlet has wanted me to do. Fine, you know, ask your question to Cody Rhodes, ask it to Jey Uso, ask it to Naomi, to Becky Lynch, whoever. But when it's Triple H and there's a lawsuit, that's the biggest thing that's hit your company in however many years, probably its entire lifetime, about the guy that you are intricately related to in numerous ways, then I don't want to hear any questions on this. And there's people that say, oh, you know, but, you know, we want to go and we want to enjoy these events as being content creators. And, you know, I know as Dave also criticized that he had reports from from media, from trained journalists who were looking at the press box at WWE at WrestleMania, who were singing Seth Rollins' song and going, what the fuck is this, basically, right? These people in serious situations are the ones that should be asking questions. You have to accept that, great, you're going to be a content creator, you're going to produce great content, and you've got an audience for it. Great, enjoy it. There's nothing to say don't do that. But when it comes to these serious things, if you don't feel you're qualified to talk on this or to challenge on this, then don't. But allow somebody else that can do. Because you're the same people that are going to turn around and go, why aren't this story getting covered? Why aren't these people being asked these questions? Why is this culture still saying, oh my God, this bad thing happened? Who allowed this to happen? And some of it is the answer is you. You allowed this to happen because you don't want to change this culture because you won't have these things challenged. And is this a perfect environment to do it? No. But there is no place for stupid questions. There's no place for filibuster questions. There's no place for just any of it in these situations. And that was Dave's point. In these situations, you let people who want to focus on the news ask these questions, ask these, you know, you might have to ask it differently because it will be, you know, they're very good at kind of diverting attention or getting away from the point. Fine. But there needs to be a focus on things because otherwise nothing changes. And we're going to get further and further away from that as the influence of kind of content creators becomes more and more, and the influence of kind of journalism becomes less. And that's a trend we're seeing in society. Look at how YouTube can control political kind of discourse, or Facebook controls political discourse. We're seeing that movement. This isn't a wrestling issue. But then I look at, and I always talk about women's football, and hey, this weekend I am going to talk about women's football. But yes, but I look at that industry, which is, and we'll probably be talking similar, there's similar comparisons to look at when it comes to women's NBA, which is another rising league in a similar way to WSL is here. But there is a group of journalists now in major outlets that focus just solely on that game. And that game is growing because the issues in it are being highlighted just as much as the content with the players or anything else. It's important to have that. If we don't have that, and we don't produce more analysts and more journalists and more reporters who actually add something to this industry, then we're actually going to regress, not going forward. And that's what it feels like at the moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's just completely say that none of this is correct just because it came from Dave Meltzer. It's frustrating. So, and he says, when there's a news story, treat it as a news story and cover it like a news story. And people don't want to do that. You have to do that, Otherwise, wrestling's just a weirdo cult. I like that cult.
You do that and you're going to piss people off. You're going to make people uncomfortable. And that's difficult to do. I get it. I understand. It's difficult to ask a difficult question. It's difficult to make somebody uncomfortable that you like or that you don't want to cause problems. And, you paid your money. You flew yourself out to WrestleMania. You don't want to, rock the boat. This is not your brand, right? That's fine. Hand the microphone to someone else. Because I guarantee there's somebody else in the room that probably would do a better job of asking the question than you will. And that's okay. You can say, hey, this isn't my brand. This isn't my scene. I'm not good at this. We don't talk about stardom for a reason. We're not good at it. It's not relevant to us. We're not going to do it. Sorry, guys. That's okay to not have an opinion. You can kind of be like, hey, I don't know anything about this. I'm going to let somebody else who's more involved in it than I am do a better job with it.
And it's funny, isn't it? Because some of the people who complained about what Dave said, and then all accused, I saw there was things accusing him of he now takes more NXT coverage since I've been at Fightful, which is hilarious on a day when you release an Eddie Kingston report that might as well be copying Brian Alvarez's homework. Right. But we're just going to take shots back and forth. No, because you missed a point because you don't want to acknowledge the point. Has there been any follow-up to this? Gulak was bullying people. Have anyone done any further work on this? Has anyone looked at what changed in the culture? Have anyone asked about kind of the things that Shawn Michaels said was in place? Are they in place? Do they cover this? Has there been any follow-up work? No.
Why did the people who told you that Gulak was bullying them feel that they couldn't say anything about it or feel that you couldn't release that publicly when he was still with the company? That'd be a question to ask. Maybe
we should do some of that rather than kind of going and not enjoying fair questions because they either make you uncomfortable, they challenge what your brand is, or, basically it's just, it's because Dave said it. You missed the points because you don't want to hear the points. You don't want to know what your impact has been on this story. Funny enough, no one went after Jesse Collins, no one went after Voices of Wrestling, who have pretty much exposed the PR link between WWE and Fightful. No comments. Just Dave. It's interesting, we got a question on that, actually.
We did get a question on this.
Yeah, so Atlas Earth asks, do outlets like Fightful, who have seemingly disputed the idea that they're running WWE PR, lying about it, or are they instead finding themselves manipulated by their sources who might be getting some kind of scripts by your Nick Khan's, Magentals and company?
This is a tough one. I don't think you or I are comfortable saying somebody's lying about something or not lying about something. Mm-hmm. We have no way of knowing for sure what, we can certainly point to things and say, hey, this seems like a coincidence or this seems odd or it's weird that this happened the way that it did. But I don't know that I'm comfortable saying, so-and-so is lying about this or so-and-so is lying about that.
I don't think we need to as well. I think, you can point to the Voices of Wrestling coverage on those articles that, not just from Fightful, but the one PW side, that we talked about earlier, the kinder and gentler releases.
Yeah.
And, if you want a direct example, Sean Bressap did say that he was given the tweet around the kind of the SmackDown against the NFL draft directly on his own Discord. and that is in the Voices of Wrestling report. So there is acknowledgement that there is a direct link that has influenced some of the things that the outlet has put out, but they covered it far more extensively than we need to, that kind of talks about that relationship. There's no doubt there's a relationship there. I don't think that they don't deny there's a relationship there.
No, I'm sure there's a relationship that all, again, it's WWPR's job to have a relationship with these outlets. And it's the outlet's job to have a relationship with it. There's not, again, I think it's important to restate here a lot of what Voices of Wrestling and Joe Lanz have talked about here, and Jesse Collins as well. The issue is not that these outlets are running WWE PR or that they're running the stories. What they also need to be doing is saying, hey, WWE PR told us this, instead of providing it as though they've scooped it somehow, right? Hey, guess what we found out? Well, no, you didn't find it out. They handed it to you. They emailed it to you, and that's fine. But like, if you, the second you make that attribution, the second you tell us where you got the information from, there's no criticism anymore, right? The criticism goes away. So that's the point that I think it's important to state. It's not that
absolutely.
It's not that the PR is involved. Again, this is a job of a journalist. You're going to deal with the PR for the companies you cover. It's that you need to be very clear and transparent about what is a PR story and what is not.
We've seen things from AEW on the other side.
Yeah.
We saw things with the footage a few weeks ago where there was kind of some very kind of well-written stuff on Fightful that was disputing things that weren't actually the story or were very cleverly worded. So it's not a one-way traffic. It just feels more prolific at the moment because, WWE is so far ahead on that PR. It's just about, it's again, the theme of this one is transparency, right? That's the kind of thing all the way across the board. And, there is this element with WWE at the moment where it was kind of in a weird week because it kind of felt like they were slightly gotten to amongst numerous individuals. We had CM Punk being CM Punk, making kind of shots at Jack Perry out of to nothing, basically, to full silence. We had Cody Rhodes kind of getting wound up by a Tony Storm quote at a press conference that actually may not even be aimed at him, maybe aimed at Triple H. And then we had Triple H's response here. And it's kind of an interesting one because you think it's probably the most successful that company has ever been, profit-wise. You just had an earning, you just had the TKO earnings call, and, they made in a quarter $313 million and $195 million. Oh, sorry, that's for UFC, made 313 and $195 million in profit. WWE made 316. It's actually made more revenue than UFC, but only $140 million in profit. But that's huge numbers. So the thing that they're all kind of lashing out at one of their most successful periods is kind of a weird kind of paradox to where you think it should be.
Right.
And, it's one of those things where I think some of it is probably driven by that profit margin. And we are seeing, continued cuts to WWE staffing where their roles can be combined with UFC. And we're also seeing, now combined events. We've got a combined UFC show with a SmackDown coming up, which again reduces venue rental and controls costs across the thing. And I think we're going to see more and more of that. And it's the same thing. I don't think you'll see stadium shows outside of when a site fee's paid. You run and this is UFC strategy in a whole. You run an arena, you pay an arena fee and you charge exuberant prices because you've controlled demand. So you don't need to, charge $30, $40 to sit at the back of an 80,000 seat stadium because you need to get people in the building. You don't need that in an arena. You've controlled that demand. So you can charge $400 a ticket, $500 a ticket. They do $17 million gates for one building. That's crazy, right?
Right.
So, but it helps their profit margin. And it helps to drive that demand and continue that growth. And that is the same thing they're going to look to do with WWE. So any indication of popularity dropping in any way is not great for them. And I think some of that is what the pressure is.
I think that's very true. And I think, we're kind of seeing that a little bit. Backlash, people seem to be very happy with it, but it didn't seem to be particularly popular. Their television ratings are kind of, again, it's SmackDown's like last month was up 10% the year before, but Raw was level and it's down for this shit. So right, and again, their ratings are spectacular. I'm not trying to downplay that. I think it's worth pointing out, as we've said over and over again, how difficult it's going to be to continue that. Right, in the face of what they have to accomplish. There are some very interesting ticket advances that have the Greensboro show for Raw this week. That map has been fascinating to watch, and obviously credit to WrestleTix because we use their stuff a lot in terms of how we track some of these things. But you know, and obviously also Dave Belter, who reports these in the Observer every week. But some of those were pretty interesting in terms of looking at the visits in terms of the last time that WWE was in the venue, right? And what they've done in comparison to the last time that they were there. And are they beating that? Are they coming close to it? Or are they coming under? And for some of these venues, they're starting to come under. And these were not like height of WrestleMania visits either. These were like last spring and summer visits. And that's kind of fascinating too, to see how these numbers are shaking out right now.
It has been interesting because, you know, they had this kind of fall over from last year's WrestleMania, where the Bloodline story was still going.
Yep.
And, you know, give them stick. But this year, you look at some of the live numbers, and you look at even interesting like Backlash. You know, 100,000 searches, maybe the lowest in company history for pay-per-view. You know, pay-per-view buys. I know it's on Peacock, but 3,900 is the lowest. For that, it's all about comparable measures.
Yes.
And then Peacock, there's no press release on Peacock this year on Backlash's success, despite there being a higher kind of subscriber rate. So all these things show that that event wasn't successful as last year, you know, outside of the live gate, where they charged a huge gate in an arena, again, high price in the arena. You know, local reporter said there hasn't been a site fee, which would make sense with the pricing and it being an arena. You know, they didn't look to run football stadium in Lyon or anything else. But that's the whole thing. So you keep an eye on these sort of things. Roman Reigns is going to be key for them. Isn't that funny after all this time? So do you see that they had the, when they had the press kind of, not the press, the public kind of thing outside the event in Lyon the day before. And they're all chanting, "We want Roman." And they're on shows chanting, "We want Roman."
Yep.
And that babyface run is huge. And if you have to, they have to get that right. But you're going in with a thing where, who's the strong heel for that? So that's kind of an interesting question. But that actually becomes more key. He actually becomes the key component going back through, because there isn't anything currently, when you look at the shows or when you look at the figures, that states that there is now going to be a continued growth. It looks like we're stabilizing now at this point.
Yes.
Roman could be the difference maker in that. We don't know. But there's definitely a stabilization. And then you've now got the upheaval come in quarter four, which we now got some clarity on.
Yes.
So Raw is not going to Netflix until January.
Nope.
And, there's big questions about not just Netflix maybe didn't want them until January, but could they actually do it by then? This is a huge upgrade for their technology system running off AWS to produce, the only broadcast for Raw. It's not the same as, piggybacking off to show it in New Zealand for WrestleMania. You are solely responsible for that. So that is a challenge. It's going to be a challenge in January, but maybe they didn't want it in September. But also, so that, Raw's gone to USA for the last quarter for $25 million, which is a steal.
Yeah.
It's an absolute steal, because SmackDown during the same quarter on USA will cost $77 million on average, excluding the escalators up and down. So that's pretty huge. And, they had no leverage. So they couldn't do anything like that. So it's cheap. For USA, it's 3 hours of content every week during the winter period. It helped their numbers going through to the end of the year. They've got it for basically nothing. At the moment, there are no dates for Raw and SmackDown confirmed after September 31st. But we're also seeing, so for September, Raw and SmackDown stay on Monday and Friday. SmackDown is moving to USA on the 30th, so being let go from Fox early because they were going to get shoved off to FS1 for college football.
Yep, and those ratings would not have been pretty.
No, they would have been bloody awful. And that's probably maybe part of the reason. But Fox had no interest, so they were happy to let that go. There's ever reports that first SmackDown on USA could be in Seattle in the second week of September, which would work out about a month before the WrestleDream show nearby Tacoma, which is in a 20,000-seater venue. So they always say that they're not bothered by them, but they always do little things like that.
Yep.
But then we'll see where they move them to. They're saying that SmackDown is going to stay on Friday nights. That doesn't tend to make sense in terms of maximizing that kind of content. But then again, if they get the NBA, things change again, right? And that looks like, the NBA offered $2.5 billion. Jesus Christ, yeah. We're offered $2.5 billion by NBC Universal Comcast for the C package in the NBA. And because it includes the NBC broadcast, they're asking TNT to look for $2.8 billion to match, which you can't see happening. And even their latest reports are saying that maybe they are aim at the deal that Amazon have. But being that they probably want the streaming element, I don't think that's happening. So, there is that thing of TNT without the NBA is a distinct possibility now. And a lot of people ask, we see it all the time, don't we? Like, how does that affect AEW? Because you would reduce carriage fees. Yeah, you would if the NBA was to leave TNT.
So this is, again, I got to interrupt because I got to pretend
Sure.
I'm going to play dumb. So a carriage fee, play. So in the United States, TNT, TBS, they're part of a cable package. You pay your cable provider a monthly fee and you get a certain number of channels. TNT and TBS are usually on kind of the default. It depends on what your provider is. TNT and TBS are then paid a percentage of that money by the cable company for the privilege of having those channels on their network. And obviously, the more stuff you have on your channels, the more desirable your channels are to the consumer, the more money the cable company can make off of them. And so it becomes like this. So part of the reason right now that TNT has very high carriage fees, is what they're called, because the cable company TNT carries the NBA. So the cable companies are willing to pay because they know that their subscribers are more likely to want packages of cable with that channel in it because they want to watch the NBA, because the NBA is a reliable ratings mover. So the question becomes, if TNT no longer has the NBA, will they be able to charge the amount of carriage fees to the cable companies to allow them to have these shows on? And this has been the latest thing that people have been, obviously, if TNT and Warner Brothers Discovery do not have the NBA, they have more money to give AEW and Tony Khan for AEW. However, if they have to reduce their overall carriage fees because the cable companies aren't willing to pay them for that, how is that going to impact the kind of money they have to offer to AEW, right? Again, it's always something terrible is going to happen to AEW. It's like, how can we portray this in a bad way?
Yeah, there's two beliefs that you kind of have to be careful for. So there's the one that's everything's doomed for AEW.
Right.
That they won't get any sort of offer. Right. And I don't think that's kind of the case. You're looking at all this is about is the value of the offer. Right. And there's this other one that they'll lose the NBA and therefore they'll give AEW some kind of astronomical deal. And that doesn't make sense either, because you are paid for your value. So what ad rates do you drive? What do you help to those carriage fees? What, are you getting out of this content? So it's not just as easy a case of, they're suddenly much, much more valuable. They'll still be, value related to their content. And also, it doesn't stop TNT, TBS, whoever, from going after other properties. WNBA, as we talked about earlier, is potentially something that could drive huge numbers that currently is unfounded. We saw this for Formula One. The first Formula One contract they had with ESPN wasn't a big money contract at all. And then you had the rise of Drive to Survive and Netflix, and all of a sudden it generated so much to ESPN that they weren't expecting, particularly in 18 to 34, that it then deserved the next contract that it got and the big upgrade. So that's kind of what you may be looking at, is looking at other potential properties to then add to that portfolio, rather than just saying this is what we have now. Right. And that would be daft not to, because, they don't want to overpay for the NBA, but they know it's going to be a huge media hit to kind of not go for it. And you need to kind of, stop that from feeling so much, not just to kind of people that work there, but also to everybody else. So it will not be just a case of they lose the NBA, they just pay what they have currently more money. And, and it's with AEW, it's been quite interesting because they've done loads of little things lately to kind of build different things into their kind of portfolio in terms of what they're advertising to, potential networks, and especially to TNT and TBS. Because, this week the last couple of weeks, we had a Dynamite into a Rampage on a Wednesday night.
Yep.
Where they put the biggest angle on the show that actually went up. If you take out the with a bit of weighted averages, thanks to Brandon Thurston for checking the numbers with me. But that 11-minute overrun that was Dynamite, if that had been on the Dynamite show, you'd see that in the graph about the 15 minutes. It was a 16% increase. If you put that into quarter 1 and 8, Dynamite does so much better. And we saw that with the Adam Copeland Christian Cage match, which had a 6-minute overrun with a 100K viewership increase. But you don't see that in that kind of quarter hour because you just see the figure for that overall quarter. And the idea is that they sacrifice slightly on the Dynamite rating to bring value to that third hour of TV with Rampage. And we've seen it just with Collision this weekend, which was also on TBS, which could be looked at as a trial thing to see how does it do on that network compared to TNT. It should get more of a lead in on Saturday, being on TBS. So how does that work for them? And again, what did they do? They put their biggest match on the show, the Adam Copeland-Kyle O'Reilly match, at the end of the show to bleed into Rampage. And when you look at what they did with the Kenny Omega thing, it gave them a huge first 4 minutes of Rampage that kind of saved that number. So, and the thing is about the Rampage hour is you could look at the ratings before this and before they started doing these experiments, and you could say, is this show worthy of an hour of TV, or is it something that we'd only consume to streaming? We could just say this could just be streaming. So you are trying to justify that third hour. And maybe that third hour will become a 3-hour Dynamite. I think we all hate that. But from a content purpose, they could look at it and say that Dynamite Rampage show we did a 0.21 for the 3-hour block. A 0.21 for the 3-hour block would most weeks get them into a similar kind of ranking position in the cable rankings as it does currently. But you'd have 3 hours of content and 3 hours of ads. So that's what they're doing, is providing all these scenarios that they can sell to the network to increase their value. And sometimes people look at it and they're too busy kind of going, we want to bash this person, we want to bash that person, so we're just going to, judge it. But you've got to see what is being done and what is being used to kind of for these crossovers, because what's their overall aim? It's the same reason now, they put people in the later quarters this week, and all of a sudden, Adam Copeland, who was the best draw in the last cycle, is now the worst draw ever because he got hammered by an NBA game.
Right.
Okay. Never mind that Raw also got hammered by an NBA game, and NXT also got hammered by an NBA game, and they all got hit massively after halftime. Peaks all at halftime. Funny that. And then second half of games, gets closer. People get more invested as they get later into a game. All took a massive hit, but now he's not a draw, right? But they are putting people in these segments they wouldn't have done in 2022. You couldn't find anybody after quarter 5 unless it was Alan Page because, he was shoved off into the mire. But, people protected themselves. Now, nobody's protecting themselves. They will put themselves in these positions because the overall aim of the company is more important.
Correct. How many quarter 7, quarter 6s have we seen Jericho in lately?
Fair bit. Yeah,
chunk
loads.
Of them. Yeah. So, and again, you don't like Chris Jericho, that's fine. He's not being selfish. He's being the opposite of selfish. He's literally taking a hit to try and cape a bridge to go to your main event so that your main event numbers don't drop and you keep that audience, right? It's why they brought back Orange Cassidy in the opener so often. It's why we're seeing those 9 o'clock slots. We saw Swerve protected last week in that 9 o'clock spot. You can look at the ad breaks. You can see what they're trying to do with who they're putting and where. And it's clear
it's all about retention. It's about retention.
Yes.
People keep looking for these enormous increases in places. And it's like they're not set up to have these big jumps in, they have a natural pattern, especially in the summer, once we hit the playoffs, where Big Bang Theory becomes kind of less important, where you have this increase from 1 and then you get a peak at 4 and 5 and then they drop kind of, especially against sports competition, against these kind of playoffs in 6, 7, 8. That's the pattern. So you are trying to retain viewers, not all of a sudden create this additional viewership. It doesn't happen like that. They don't have their viewership doesn't work like that. Their average viewership is kind of 60 to 70 minutes by each individual. So you have to maximize that. And the key is to try and drag that out further.
Yes. And
these individuals are being used to do that. That is their role. You're not going to see some sort of huge peak in quarter 7, with 2 ad breaks. It doesn't exist. it's just, it doesn't matter who that is. And I love the people that were like, oh, you know, the WWE don't protect people with ad breaks. And it's like,
oh, give me a goddamn
Or
break.
WWE don't put people at halftime, or that doesn't influence their numbers. When we can think of numerous examples of big promos that have fitted with halftime. Every company do it. You know, WWE do their thing where they protect people because they're so far above it everywhere at the moment. They don't have to worry about, oh, it affects this rating or as a whole. It's a different strategy because they're in different positions and they have a different base that comes in at different times. And that's kind of where it's frustrating. The thing with AEW as of late has been that they've had quite a big drop in 18 to 34.
Yes.
And yeah, the worrying thing for that, if you are going to worry about it or you're going to make, it's not just, you know, I've seen a lot of stuff like they're just uncool. Cheers, Dave.
Nerds, all of us.
Yeah,
nerds
we're
just
nerds.
Watching the show. Uncool.
Uncool, yeah. But some of that is the only thing that always concerns me is that is it's the same pattern that happened with Rampage and that happened with Collision. It was the 18 to 34 that dropped off and we never really got them back.
No.
So that is the only thing that concerns me. However, there are other reasons why you could say there would absolutely be a drop off. So we haven't really had any big TV matches in the last 4 or 5 weeks, especially now we're into this kind of pay-per-view cycle that they do now. And we've also lost 3 of their key draws in 18 to 34 proven draws, you know, Darby Allin, Paige and John Moxley most weeks from TV. So it's not just a case of, oh, something's changed. They're now, you know, they were cool 5 weeks ago and now they're uncool. No, they have, you know, and then the stories for the last kind of rotation and this one, you know, only just kind of started, are, you know, it felt like a step down from the previous pay-per-view. So sometimes you get drop-off, you know, like WWE do for WrestleMania. You know, Revolution was so big. And they had the hot kind of title story going in with like the Page Swerve stuff, which was the kind of probably the most recent story that people kind of keep talking about still, I guess. You know, outside the current angle. And then obviously the Sting retirement. So you will get some of this group back when the playoffs finish. You know, you will get some of this group back when people come back in, but it's always harder to get them back than it is when to lose them. So they are going to have to do some big things to kind of produce that lineup. And I think you look at it after Forbidden Door, you know, you've got 3 months to all in practically. So 2.5. So you've got time to do that, but it's about getting some of these people back on screen. But I don't think they're completely lost in the way that they were with Rampage and with Collision.
I don't think so. I think the pay-per-view, you can sort of see the way they're table setting some stuff, and not just for this next pay-per-view for Double or Nothing, but for the rest of the summer, a little bit for Forbidden Door, although I think you can see that a little bit more on the New Japan side than the AEW side, at least in terms of storylines. But it does it does seem like, you know, you kind of have a direction at this point right now as to where the pay-per-view is going to go. I think they did a very good job this week of sort of creating a tie between the shows and a tie between the angles of the shows. The stuff they did with Swerve was excellent, I thought, in terms of how they responded to the angle on Wednesday with the Mogul Embassy and how he kind of came back to that. I thought they did a good job of having Danielson give the rah-rah AEW promo that we hadn't seen from him so far, even though it didn't strike a chord with me personally, but I appreciated that they did it. You do hope that this is just the start of this program that's going to last through the summer, and at some point we're going to have people involved in it that are maybe a little bit more.
We should talk about both these things, really. So Team AEW, right? Okay. So I was discussing this with someone the other day, and it's quite clear that there were kind of different names thrown in and out the hat. So the thing about Bryan Danielson, so you've got FTR. We discussed the issues in terms of FTR being involved in this, in terms of, you know, the correlation with Punk and the kind of storyline, or will they, won't they leave? And even, you know, Cash has got his court date due up very soon. Whatever, we discussed that one. Okay. Eddie Kingston. Okay. Yeah, not been on TV for a little while, but makes sense, you know, lost his title to Okada. Hopefully he can compete. You know, he was nasty spot at the end of the Resurgence match with Gabe Kidd. It delayed the angle that they did in Ontario, California. How many times, by the way, did I say Ontario, California Bucks? It's
quite a bit.
How many times? Yeah, and this is my own victory lap. I'm going to take this one.
Take it. Nick Jackson-esque, run around the ring, hands in the air.
Yeah, I also did that Saturday. I thought it was great. I just keep doing it. No, but that kind of made me laugh. But it's like, okay, yeah, Kingston makes sense. All right, we'll see what happens, obviously, with that one. Danielson. Okay. Danielson, the thing for me with this is that 2 weeks ago, Will Ospreay had to retire a move because he was devastated because he thought he'd ended Bryan Danielson's career. Danielson comes back. He's immediately in a brawl. And we just pretend like this didn't happen. So this is where you can see some of the late changes that kind of have happened.
Yeah.
So we killed that story. And they made a brief reference to it on Twitter about Will kind of being mentally weak. But you've killed the story. You can't go anywhere further with that. So that's had really that's just done. And now he's wrestling again. The thing about the Team AEW thing to me, and I think there's twofold, is that one, these should be beaten quite easily, comprehensively at the pay-per-view. If you're going to do this angle, you need to go full on into it, which means not trying to do a half and half thing or people not being paid. No, the Elite need to be kind of killing the company sort of thing in terms of killing the other people at the start. It's like, it'd be like if, what was it, Thanos and the Avengers? Jesus Christ, what's going on?
Yes.
I'm losing it. It'd be like, if he had the first battle and then the first team beat him, or the second team beat him, and we just went, okay, that's it, end of film. We won't have a second film. We'll just have one film. No split in that last set of films. It doesn't work. You either have to go all in on it or you don't. So none of this. If you think it's just going to be like a short program up to blood and guts, like what's the point? There's no point. And it's really funny because in a weird way, it kind of feels like they're speed running this and like the swerve angle. Like we're going really quick. So it's like kind of the opposite. So in the swerve thing, you've got like all these things happening like really, really quickly. Christian, and then, and now my embassy have turned, and now he's got to fight them, and then he'll have to fight Christian, but then he also gets back into the Elite. So his is like going 100 miles an hour. So you didn't get that period of the start of his reign where you had like a month of I'm just a champion, let's celebrate it. We're basically straight into he on the baby face, and then he's got to battle back. It's a hard balance because of where they are. It's the same with the Elite stuff. So rather than having them kind of take more and more control each week, and then you get to anarchy, we're already at anarchy, after a week. Right. So there is a kind of little bit of speed running. So to mitigate that, you have to do more. You have to go further. By midsummer, they should be completely in control of this government. There shouldn't be some power struggle. That's how you get there, because then they're the ultimate heels to be defeated. It then gets difficult because then you have to talk about the World Championship.
Right.
And where do you go from there? There's people that say this angle isn't drawing, by the way. It is drawing.
Yeah,
it's drawing. The quarters, when you split the quarters up, they're very good. It's doing their thing. They're controlling it through the show. It's giving the shows kind of that connectivity. But yeah, Danielson I get why they did it. They needed the star power. But I don't know if it's perfect. And this AEW team, I think the big problem with it is for me, and I know Danielson said, he said 2 things that was interesting to me. So he said that, you represent you were AEW at the start, but now like I love AEW and this is AEW. Okay, fine. The problem is, and I protect it, is like, what's his identity now? The identity that people associated with more was that initial identity. So if you have people that represent that more, and the problem is I think there's a large part of this audience that connects more with AEW prior to 2022 than they do to anything that's gone since. And they don't even know what AEW's identity is now. No one can tell you. He can't even tell you. Now we're on Where the Best Wrestle. What does that even fucking mean? Like, so in this context, the people who are more representative of AEW are the bad guys, and the good guys are more representative in terms of or recognizable is probably a better word, other than Eddie, to other companies.
Right.
And that's a problem with the kind of thing. So when you get to that next stage, and you can obviously see Swerve Strickland's going to be involved. That's good.
Right. They're laying that groundwork very, very,
absolutely.
Very aggressively.
Yeah. So the people that are going to be involved in the next stage have to be recognizable to AEW. So they need to be people who produced in AEW, who found their kind of their success in AEW. And that's how people recognize people, right? How you watch them grow. You watch them come through with this company, so Darby Allin, easy one. That should happen. A guy like Orange Cassidy, you do that, People like that need to be in that next kind of wave.
Phase of this, yes.
Yeah, and they should ultimately be, that's the sort of people that eventually should defeat the elite. Whereas everything else, otherwise you become really, really murky. And that's kind of the little uneasiness that you kind of have around it right now. What do you think about that main eventing? I think Dave and Brian Alvarez have said that's going to main event Double or Nothing. What do you think about that?
I think you main event Double or Nothing with that if you've got an angle following, right? Mm-hmm. Like if you've got an angle following that pay-per-view, then you have that Anarchy in the Arena main evented. That's my perspective. Otherwise, I think you should go with the world title. Okay.
You don't think about Willow and Mercedes?
I think the timing is very unfortunate. I don't part of me I have no issue with Willow and Mercedes main eventing the pay-per-view. I just, and maybe I'm being incorrect and I say, okay, I think they could even be a backup. I guess I don't know. We've seen the secondary belts main event pay-per-views, but they've never main evented the pay-per-view when the main title was being defended. Mm-hmm. Right? We have seen these sort of big Anarchy in the Arena, Stadium Stampede. We have seen those main event the pay-per-view, even when the main title is being defended. So I'm kind of torn on that. I don't know that, I'm really enjoying the Willow and Mercedes story. I feel like the last couple of promos Mercedes has done have been a lot better. I feel like it's almost a meme at this point to sort of be like sometimes I feel like people don't give people room to get better. It's like, she sucks. Well, she did suck, but does she suck now? Or are you just sort of, is this an echo of that she sucked the first time? So you decided she sucks so she can't get better. I think the promos have been better. I think there's an actual story to this, which I really appreciate. I feel like they're telegraphing clearly that Mercedes is turning heel, which they should. That should be what the story is, right? Willow is, of all people, it should be Willow Nightingale should not turn heel, let alone in a situation like this. But I have to be honest, they need a hot angle for the summer. And I don't know that Mercedes and Willow is the hot angle. I think it could be part of a bigger thing or I just don't know if they're hot enough on their own to justify headlining the pay-per-view and setting that summer of television up.
I think it's a difficult one because I can understand the kind of push for it. It would be the first women's main event. I remember a similar push for Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa at Revolution of 2022. Yeah.
Yep.
But there's different things to it. So my thing with this is, so I know that there is an argument that for women's main events to become more accepted, that you need to do one, and that's a reason to push for it. But my always thing is it's a battle between is it the earned main event? Right. When you look at the Anarchy in the Arena, the elite thing is the hottest thing on the show. So you could potentially argue that as a business sense. Okay, fine. Can I argue the same with this? I'm not sure. The other thing is that I'd never want it to be a token. I hate that. We've been through this a million times. I don't care what it is, but I don't want that. So the thing around, the Becky Lynch WrestleMania in New York was the biggest drawing thing going into that. It was the thing of the most interest. It deserved to main event. Right. Therefore, it meant more because they'd earned it and they'd been given the time and the placement to do it, but it was been pushed like that. So the whole thing felt like, yes, it should main event, and now it's special. If you just do it as a token and then you just never come back to it and you never then put the time into these performers, it doesn't mean anything. Nothing's changing. So I can understand the arguments for it. The other thing is, it's very much a case of I was in Wembley yesterday and the song's been in my head all day, so it's sticking there. Everybody, it's a Tears for Fears song. Yeah, everybody wants to rule the world.
Yeah.
And so everybody wants a main event of their own choosing, but then they also want other things. So they look at Swerve Strickland and they say, okay, so we want Willow and Mercedes to main event this one. And at Forbidden Door, Moxley might main event. And I think that's a real possibility. If you had Moxley Zack Sabre Jr. match, potentially, that's a bigger match than, say, Swerve's talking about Shingo. You'd be reluctant to not think of that as a bigger match. So you have that danger of then, okay, so then you've got two pay-per-views in a row. If Swerve doesn't main event, but then there's people that want him to lose to Will Ospreay at, All In. or, if he was to lose to somebody else at All In, but he wasn't even the main event because Ospreay was, that's potential as well. And all of a sudden it's like, well, you can't have everything.
Right.
So you want this guy to be shown as a world champion, but you also want all these other things. You can't have everything. So they have to make decisions. And, there's been some good work with Swerve in the last couple of weeks in terms of protecting him. We talked about he got the halftime in the NBA this week. He was put in the top quarters. We talked about 1, 4, and 5. And on Dynamite, he's pretty much been 1, 4, and 5. So I was really happy to see that. Christian, we talked about the lack of other challenges, why he was the best one. It's so funny, actually. We did all that stuff and everyone was like, you're being so negative. And like 3 days later, there was a big board thread on AEW has world titles and mid-card belt. And I pissed myself. It's so funny. But these were real concerns, and they still are real concerns. And it's the reason why he needs to go into that elite program. And then whatever comes out of Blood and Guts needs to spill over into Wembley. There needs to be a continuous phase of this. And this is the thing. So if he's not in the main event at Double or Nothing, you said, he needs to end with an angle. He needs to be in that angle. There have been how many pay-per-views now since the world title was the lead story coming out of a show? So what? All In, probably, okay. So after All In, we had All Out, world title wasn't defended. Wrestle Dream, world title wasn't defended. Full Gear, biggest story coming out was Swerve and Adam Page by a long way. Real, just pissed off everyone. December, biggest story was coming out was, who was the devil, not who was the world champion.
Right.
Biggest story coming out of Revolution was Sting's retirement. Biggest story coming out of the Dynasty pay-per-view. I love it to say that it was Swerve's coronation, but reality was, they put more focus and discussion, and even a video the following week on Dynamite Danielson versus Ospreay. So how many pay-per-views has it been since the world champion was involved in the thing that people were talking about coming out of the pay-per-view? In a good way, not in a bad way like Full Gear. Yeah. Jesus Christ. I'm never getting over that day. Sad. But so you want him involved in that angle, and then that needs to carry on through the summer, and that is a way that you will get him up to that next level. But then if you don't promote him, and people still, they have this negative perception, as we talked about, already built in because he's an AEW coded guy, because he hasn't had success in other places. So you're always fighting against that. And we've seen that with some of the ratings, overall ratings, even though he's been protected, it's still he's not a draw. We knew we were going to see that. We knew we were going to see that with the NBA.
He's not selling tickets. Samoa Joe wasn't selling tickets either, but we weren't mad at Samoa Joe. It's
exactly there. Right. So you got to fight against that perception. So if he doesn't main event the next 2 pay-per-views and he was to lose up the next one, then people will just be going, they never really invested in him. So you have to kind of prove that wrong. So it's okay. If he goes and main events the next 4 after that, fine. Similar to what John Moxley did and what Kenny Omega did, and who's the other one? MJF. Thank you. My mind's going.
But this is where you end up in a struggle, right? Because if you want this angle to be what it should be, right, which is, as again, to borrow from the board, elite civil war, right? You're going to have everybody, which is what you sort of seem to be doing to moving the pieces in place. Some people are going to have to be selfless. Yes. Some people are going to have to be willing to take a back seat. Some people are going to have to be willing not to be the star of the show. Some people are going to have to be willing to put other people over. And we're all going to have to pull together in a way that I think maybe we lost a little of the spirit of, right? I feel like we're going to have a spiritual saging where everybody goes back to Daly's place and remembers what the whole point is, right? That's what we need to be doing here. Right? It can't be one of these situations where it's like, well, we can only put this one in and that one in because this one won't lose to this one and this one doesn't want to do this.
Well, there's been elements of that this year. People don't want to talk about it, but it's got better. Well, it has gotten better, but there has still been elements of that this year.
Yeah.
It's not quite away from it, and we need to get people back on TV in prominent spots every week. That helps them. They've got to do that. And we get people back, Moxley, when he finishes up this New Japan run, if that goes past June, then he's their biggest ratings draw. It's a strange set of decisions. I get it. In his contract, he can work everywhere. But this year, it's interesting. But also, you get Adam Page back. People don't want to hear about him being a draw in anything. It's, again, he's an AEW coded wrestler. And also, whatever else. But that will be a big jump to MJF. I don't think, do anyone else actually believe he got shoulder surgery? No, we don't. No. But you get him back in, Cole, who knows what's going on with Cole with his recovery. But there are people that you get back in and you get them, everybody involved in this. It needs to flood through the entire company. Can I just say that the people that think Adam Page shouldn't be involved in this story are fucking insane and they're driving me insane. Can I say that? Yeah, I don't care. You're driving me fucking insane, right? This is the biggest story in the company and the biggest potential spot that this guy can come back and you're like, oh, no, it's fine. He can just go back to the mid-card. Like, what the fuck? He's a key point in this because he could go either way. And if people are like, oh, why would he go with the Elite? And it's like,
well, that should be that's your end of Double or Nothing angle, right? Is he shows up and everybody's like, what the fuck does he do? What side does he pick? Right? Yeah. Like, that's your angle. If you're smart, you drag that out a week or two and make people tune in to see what the fuck's going on. But when I talk about this in terms of like selflessness and everything else, like some of this has to be like, you need we've talked about this a lot, right? The people most willing to put other people over have been AEW originals. Those people have to go over in this fucking feud. Like you can like, and I mean, I don't want to say that to, obviously Bryan Danielson would lose to everybody and their brother if he had his choice. I know that. Like, but there's the point where you just, we can't have any of this like, oh, hey, it's going to be, it's going to be a barbed wire match and now we're doing this and this and that. Like, fucking take a pin. Like, take a pin. Like, just get beat. It's fine. It's not the end of the world, guys. Like, I get that it feels really important sometimes, but I'm going to tell you in 20 years, no one's going to remember. Like...
It needs it for the momentum. You need the strong momentum. You have to build them up as heels to then be brought down. Do they need another guy at the front? Yeah, I actually think they need Paige. I think they could do with a really strong front guy.
But let's not downplay how great Jack Perry has been. Like,
you
want to talk about like, and I feel like I have like again. I'm not willing. I'm happy to admit when I was wrong. Right? How many people have been like, so and so needs to go to Japan. So and so needs to go to Japan. And I'm like, everybody overstates people going to Japan. It really
did. Go to Japan.
It worked really well for Jack Perry. Like, he's like a completely different person. He's more himself and more confident in himself than he's ever been, right? And I don't know whether it was going to Japan, whether it was just the circumstances of what happened to him and how he dealt with it. But like realistically, he's like a different guy. And even though I agree with you, I do think they need somebody else, and I do think they need someone in a heavy spot. He's done absolutely spectacularly, and it's a credit to him.
Yeah, and for me, he's the sort of guy that you pick up like the TNT or sign him. They give him all the gold. People don't like that, but that's how these factions work, and then you pick them off one by one, just like they did with the Elite in 2021.
Right.
Right. So you do that. That's the whole way it works, and that's something that you just have to do. And then you get them baby faces achieving, and you get them moments, and then chases is what drives you momentarily.
Right.
They're what drive your ratings. They're what drive your tickets, especially ticket sales. Ticket sales. You've got the opportunity to do a swerve, maybe Jack Perry match, maybe do that in Chicago. Or you have him win the title. You remember who won the TNT off Copeland in Chicago? Could you imagine?
I mean, plus, like, you also have the benefit of that, like, having a storyline callback, too. Like, I mean, come on. Like, you can tie that into the Christian stuff so easily. And that's the one benefit of, like, you have all of these threads of your own history. Okay? You don't have to borrow from New Japan or AAA or CMLL or WWE. You have your own history that you can call back to. And that's what makes this feud potentially bigger and better than anything you've done before, and why you need to lean into it, and why it could be your big difference maker this summer as WWE goes into their difficult period, right? Like, change the perception, change the narrative, just fucking go for it.
And that's why I just don't think it works with having people that are more recognizable elsewhere. Use your AEW guys. Use your people that made their history in this company, who their audience loves, that they care about, that they're invested in, not because they follow them somewhere else, but because they grew with them in this place.
Right.
It's critical for me. All right. Well, that was an interesting journey, wasn't it?
We went places, Trish.
We went places, yeah. Yeah, I didn't do any singing. Are you impressed I did no singing?
I'm a little disappointed. I'm not going to.
You're a little disappointed. Oh, yeah. See, if it... Well, I tell you what, we can sing, actually.
You bitch.
Did you like my little kind of trickery there?
That was well done. That was well done.
You're like, I'm going to sing a football song, and I'm like, yeah. I'm like, fuck, I got this one out. So we've talked about a lot of serious stuff today, and it's actually Sarah's birthday.
It's my birthday.
So it is. So it's very much happy birthday, Sarah. Thank you for doing this with us. And thank you for being my friend. You know, you're an incredible person that I'm lucky to know. And I think it's good, you know, if you're listening to this and you always wonder, you know, about the quality of the people you're listening to, and if you can invest in them as people. Yeah, Sarah is one of those people. So happy birthday, mate. I ain't gonna sing it. Don't worry. I told our friend Peter yesterday at Wembley that nobody needs to hear my singing voice. So we'll keep to that.
One day we'll do one of those. You know how they do Brian and Vinny do those New Year's shows where everybody imbibes a little bit too much. I'll get you on a lot of urn brews and like make you crazy.
Look, Iron Brew look say, yeah, I think that would probably work. But yeah, happy birthday.
Thank you.
And you know, everyone's and for those that kind of know that I'm insane or decided to follow me on Twitter, yes, I did bombard your Twitter with all Man United women winning the FA Cup at Wembley. Tune, get in. I said I'd say something. I don't care. It was great. It's nice to have a world outside of wrestling. Someone accused me of never having one the other day, so that was quite nice too.
Fuck you, I do too.
Apparently we don't, but there you are. Yeah, great fun. Nice to be at Wembley and no one got punched this time, so that was nice. Oh no, didn't hit.
It's just a guillotine choke, right, Pat McAfee? Sorry.
To be fair, it was nice to not have my phone blowing up this year. Anyway, right, that's enough jokes. I'm in enough trouble now. There we go. So this has been the Trish and Sarah Wrestling Podcast. We are produced by the wonderful Leah of Tunnel Talk. We love you, Leah. I'm waving at you through our screen. She does a fantastic job. This is going to be another short turnaround to get this with you for Tuesday. So thank you very, very, very much. We are part of the Social Suplex Network. You can find all their great podcasts on their website. And also you can join the Social Suplex Discord. Come and interact with us, ask us questions, you know, ask about the rabbits. I don't know. What do you want to ask about? Come and ask us. But it's a great little community. This month you can also find the AEW Match Guide channel where Sir Samuel is putting together the ultimate list of AEW matches for the last 5 years. If you wish to be involved in that, come on to Discord, join that channel and find where you can vote. You can also find us on Twitter, not X, just Twitter.
X.
Yeah, you can find Sarah at Sarah Graps. That's Sarah Graps. You can wish her a belated birthday because we kept that quiet, haven't we? We kept that one quiet. Outside the group chat, we've kept that one quiet. Causing all sorts of trouble now.
God damn it.
Or you can find myself at Trish Spears 48, at Trish Spears 48, ratings in bio. I think that's how it works.
I was proud of that one. I'm not going to lie. Ratings in bio. Watch the ad breaks in bio.
Fucking ad breaks. Yeah, that is a slogan. Or you can find us at Trish and Sarah. You can also email us if you have a question, any feedback, any concerns, anything you wish, really. At trishandsarahpod@gmail.com, trishandsarahpod@gmail.com. Be back in a couple weeks. Hopefully the world doesn't do another flip in between now and then, but it probably will. So until then, I've been Trish.
I've been Sarah.
And this has been the Trish and Sarah Wrestling Podcast.
Anyway, say happy birthday to
Sarah.
Good point.
Oh, sorry. Happy birthday.
Sarah.
Thanks. No. Sing it.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday.